Morning, fellow humans. Um, it's been a while since I've recorded anything and shared it. It's okay. I'm not on a set schedule, at least yet, but it will come. I just wanted to kind of check in, or at least get the ball rolling again regarding this form of self-expression. Um, and I don't have a lot of time, but I wanted to kind of share a few thoughts about Death Eaters. It's kind of an odd folkloric term, not an uncommon kind of idea in in the world's kind of folklore systems. But I'm specifically referring to kind of the Welsh style of this idea, the folkloric tradition that kind of is passed down to us from our forefathers is that. There's a tradition to have a walnut bowl, and when someone dies, they call for the old sire. And it's generally speaking, most of the time, it's a down and out kind of person, or a person that's basically in the position where they are bartering their soul and taking on the sin of the deceased as a kind of an exchange. And so, it focuses on kind of a walnut bowl where the deceased is laid out, and that bowl is passed to an individual, usually this is folklore. So the tale is, or the ritual is, that the wooden bowl is filled with beer, and a loaf of bread is given to an individual, generally speaking, kind of a down and out type of a character, where this individual is the sin eater, is taking upon the sins of the deceased as a barter, is basically bartering his or her own soul, to kind of pay for the sins of the deceased, so that deceased can rest, basically, will not walk again, become a ghost, whatever. I was thinking about this in context with the generational situation that we're in. There's a lot of really interesting polls out there on how unpopular some of the current situation is, and I think that in some ways, I feel a little bit like a sin eater of my generation, or of at least my father's generation, where there's a lot of belligerence in the world. I've been kind of experimenting on social media with engaging kind of in good faith as much as I can with individuals that are kind of expressing some of these worldviews that are antithetical, in my opinion, to morality. Basically Confederates, neo-Confederates, like I keep talking about, those individuals that are fundamentally racist, white Christian nationalists, etc., and trying to understand where they're coming from, where the mindset is coming from. Because one of the things human self-delusion is one of the most powerful things, including myself. I delude myself because I'm a human. I try really hard not to. And I try to keep an open heart and an open mind about changing my own mind. And I do. Over time, especially, I have come to understand the wisdom of others in various ways. But a lot of what we're living through is the sins of our fathers and our forefathers and their fathers, especially when it comes to things like the Lost Cause generation. The Lost Cause, in the last few days, weeks, the Voting Rights Act has basically just been finally gutted by the Supreme Court of the United States. That ground was extremely hard won by people that don't look like me, and by people that do look like me. But mostly, I don't want to. Not everybody's struggle is everybody else's. And I find a deep sadness with the turnout of what had happened, where the Voting Rights Act was a powerful step forward for our nation, for our understanding. But the sins of our fathers just keep creeping up. Again, I keep harping about not harping, but I keep bringing up some of these fundamental things about the lost cause, about the Civil War, about slavery, industrialized slavery, and about kind of magical thinking and how corrosive some of those things are to the human condition. And the Voting Rights Act was a tremendous step forward for our culture, for our human culture, especially in the United States. There was an acknowledgement of the original skin of our nation, of slavery, and an attempt to try to begin the steps of dealing with that sin, dealing with the reality of generational bigotry, etc. And recently, and like I said, in the last few days, the Voting Rights Act has basically been gutted, completely nullified by our Supreme Court, and that puts people like I in a very significant conundrum, where when you know that something is right, and of course, it's the Civil Rights or the Voting Rights Act may not have been 100%. Well, I'm not going to even say that. The Voting Rights Act was a step forward, and we have now moved backwards. And that's because of the sins of our fathers. That's because of the sins of ourselves, the sins of our culture. We as Americans still have not come to grips with what we did to other humans, what we are doing to other humans. The Voting Rights Act was to try, and I'm not going to explain it here, to be honest. I'm not, if you don't understand the context, you should. And if you don't, if you feel like you think you know what that story is, I don't think you do. I think even, especially also myself, I'm going back and I'm revisiting now that this step backwards has occurred. I'm going back and re-educating myself on the struggles of what we just lost, of the struggles and the pain and the blood and the sacrifice that happened so that our country could move forward in that way, in that expression. And now that's gone, and I feel a great sense of loss and a great sense of, in some ways, despair. How does this tie in with the whole, the sin-eating thing? I've recently, like I said, I've been engaging with individuals that are not like me, that don't have my worldview on social media. Not in an antagonistic way, or I don't particularly care to convince anyone of anything at this point. I've got some strong feelings about the futility of some of that, how deprogramming people from cults, etc., is an internal process. Sure, you can bear witness to the truth, but at the end of the day, those individuals have to go through their own process, their own journey of reconciliation, and a lot of times they never do. A lot of people just go to their graves avoiding the reality of their own sin, avoiding the responsibility of their sin. And a lot of the rhetoric around especially racism, and especially now in my father's generation and now my generation, is all about denying the fact that racism actually exists. I don't think you can be an actually aware, rational person and hold that worldview. I think that it requires either belligerent ignorance or you're an advocate. you're an advocate for that worldview, for the worldview that some Homo sapiens are better, have greater worth than other Homo sapiens based upon these artificial constructs of race. But these are sins that we have to grapple with, and we still are, and we've really, the Voting Rights Act was a big loss. Lately, reason and intellect and the humanistic worldview has been really beat up a lot by a lot of different people, including in some ways the allies that we should have relied upon. It's we're at a crossroads, as we all know, and I contemplate the sin eaters because the whole idea of, in some ways, exploiting someone who's so desperate for food, so desperate that they would barter their own soul and bring on the sins of others in payment for the temporal food is a powerful kind of it's a powerful image. It's a powerful folkloric image. And I think in some ways it's kind of where we're at. The fact is that our culture has been demonizing the intellect, demonizing compassion, demonizing rationality. And unfortunately, those individuals that were to be our allies also have exploited compassionate individuals for their own gains, for their own worth. And in a lot of ways, like the Voting Rights Act should have been protected and pushed forward, but those, quote, liberals, unquote, are also complicit. I don't like talking about the unigovernment, et cetera, uniparty, but really a lot of it boils down to human greed and ignorance and the fact that leaders should be, in some ways, for the people and not of them, in the sense that we should hold our leaders to a high standard, and ourselves, of course, to a high standard. And that erosion of that standard has created some of this problem, and so it allows the evil to grow. It allows the benefit of the doubt of churches who say that they're doing good work, but in fact being complicit over generations in the United States, or that kind of quote liberal unquote politician who has taken the blood and the sweat of those disenfranchised individuals and used it to their own benefits, played lip service to morality for profit. That's a very human trait. Sin happens, right? I mean, we're humans. I think that we could have a good discussion about what sin means, etc., later, but I keep thinking about the sin eaters, and I keep thinking about the fact that somebody's got to pay for the sin. Somebody's got to pay for this blood, the blood of these patriots, the blood of those individuals. They cry from the soil for at least us to understand that they existed. And some of us in an intellectual that do embrace intellectualism, that do embrace kind of a compassionate worldview, an informed worldview, especially when it comes to history. It's been exceedingly difficult to watch us as a culture, as a global culture, but also as a local culture, as a regional and national culture, slip and allow ourselves to delude each other into what we want to hear. the oldest sins in the newest ways, as I say. But somebody's got to pay for that. And right now, the sin eaters, those that are consuming the product of this sin, are those disenfranchised individuals that always are there, just like the folkloric Welsh sin eater, who are so desperate to have some kind of a sustenance for their current situation that they're able that they just swallow the sins of others. They take on that on their own souls, and I think that's what's going on a lot with especially with a lot of these people that are fueling the rich, fueling the Epstein class with being complicit with the lies, being complicit with eating the sin of others, and thus bringing it on themselves, bringing that responsibility on themselves, on their soul. To what end? Well, it's off, for the person who is basically paying the beer and the bread for the disenfranchised to take upon the pain that they have created for the world. It's a great deal. It's a little bit of beer, a little bit of bread, and you don't have to worry about it, right? The others can suffer. Those, the down and out can suffer. Those poor white trash can suffer because you have convinced them of their lost cause. You've convinced their souls, and you've bred them to that. You've bred them to be sin eaters, to be the ones that bear the brunt of the evil that is brought on the world by the ruling class in a lot of ways. Now, that's not to say that we humans don't have our own well of evil that we bring into the world, evil, quote unquote. We can, from a philosophical standpoint, it would be an interesting conversation to have about the relativistic moral view, where morality comes from, etc. That's all really fascinating topic for me, but that's not kind of my focus. Right now, we're struggling. We are. And those of us who have kind of embraced intellectualism and look at this from a little bit more objective view, regardless of which T-shirt or, regardless of which political elixir you've swallowed, it's really tough. And it's very sad. The passing away of many things is really difficult, and the Voting Rights Act is very impactful. It's an impactful defeat on the side of the right and the just, and it's a great victory for those who are self-delusional, etc., that are driving towards this goal, this self-delusional goal. And a lot of it really is self-delusional. Compassion is compassion. I can understand. It's very important for me to say that I can understand where an individual like a white supremacist, for instance, I can understand the mechanisms whereby white supremacists are made, because I've lived it, and even those individuals that I know personally that are involved in some of these kinds of generational efforts of this lost cause, they're not even some of them are not even self-aware to know that they are accumulating this sin upon their souls. And we're all eating it now. We're all dealing with the consequences of our fathers' and our forefathers' sins, and ours, of course. And we're, once again, the United States is involved in a Middle Eastern conflict. Geopolitics, that's a whole kind of thing, right? Obviously, but the reality is that this is just a retreading of the same kind of problem that the sin eaters have eaten before. It's just a retreading, and there is hope. I do know that there is hope. Like the old the old contracts, the old delusions aren't working as well with the newer generations, but and they're no longer, a lot of them are no longer eating, taking ownership of that. So there is some hope, but today, Tuesday, the 5th of May, this is it's a difficult day for a lot of people, and I feel that. I feel the despair and the frustration of, generations of effort, of blood, of sacrifice, feeling like it has just slipped away. And I can give platitudes, this is a battle. It's not, this is a battle in the war, in the constant war. And we're not defeated, the humanity is not defeated yet. But as I speak, young men and women are dying and paying the price for the sins, for the greed of the elite, for the greed of our self-delusions. I think a lot about because I've had personal relationships with Russians that, for instance, that are gone. They're just gone because they paid the ultimate price for the sins of greed and global nationalist agendas and our oligarchic control, and even. And it's hard to keep moving forward when, like, even my own social media feeds are just being inundated with propaganda, and the us and them and all of that stuff. We can have a conversation about the what ifs, but at the end of the day, yeah, I'm pretty adamant about my worldview. But even the algorithms for some of these social media sites are so contrived and so controlled by the Epstein class, by the ruling class. My feeds are inundated by this pablum of especially right-wing conspiracy, right-wing control, right-wing lies. The Southern Poverty Law Center is actually propping up racism, and all of these kinds of things are just so vapid and so ridiculous if you take 1 second to objectively look at what you're seeing. But I despair a lot in that most of my fellow humans just don't bother because they're not incented to, because they're incented to go the other way, to give themselves the benefit of the doubt, to keep eating the sins of others and themselves without understanding the consequence on their souls, on the world around them, on the people around them. I despair sometimes, I despair about the wealth disparity and the things that I see in the world where, people, young people, middle-aged people, old people are working as hard as they possibly can, 3 jobs, 80-year-old greeters at the door of mega retail shops. Like it's exploitation. It's economic exploitation. Under the guise of, quote, capitalism, unquote. And a lot of my peers, a lot of my close friends don't see it. They read Atlas Shrugged and they don't see it. On the other side, a lot of people who I am lumped in with by most people on the left side don't see other things. They don't see the disempowerment and and it's not an even game. We're on an asymmetric battlefield. The whataboutisms are going to be always there. They're always there. You go through history, it's the same technique. It's the same technique over and over and over again, and it's never going to stop. But we got to keep going because humanity is worth it. Our species is capable of such amazing feats, such beauty. Um, I was reading. I've been reading two books. I've been revisiting some of the classics in my own because of my own despair about what's going on, trying to find inspiration, and not just consequence from our past. And been reading H.G. Wells and like the that will to hold on to the possibility, to hold on to the capacity of mankind for good, in spite of all the evidence to the contrary. That's powerful, and I've been reading some of that to try to keep myself afloat, to try to keep giving myself perspective. And I've also been reading a lot of Hemingway lately. I've been rereading A Farewell to Arms, and I love, well, the literary critics will say that a lot of his turns of phrase aren't his. It was his editor, blah, blah, blah. I get it. I understand. But at the end of the day, Hemingway as a caricature, as a function of his time, it's, some of these classics I think we need to reread. I don't know where I'm going with this today, other than just to share that and to acknowledge that humanity and intellectualism and a humanistic worldview has been really taking the hits lately. But that's not an uncommon thing. A lot of scientists have died for their view. A lot of people have shed blood. A lot of people have been lynched because of who they are and what they've said. That's going to keep happening, and that sin has to be paid for. And the hope is that if we as humans, if we as compassionate intellectuals can keep moving forward, we're going to be okay. It's not going to be easy. And a lot of beautiful things are passing away. And that kind of melancholic ache that you read, like from Tolkien's work, the sacking of the Shire, the raising of the Shire, I'm sorry. Like that kind of ache, that longing ache for those things that are passing. That's real, and people can scoff. Idiots. Well, that's the wrong way to say that. The uninformed can use our melancholy against us. I get it, but my melancholy against me, but that's okay. I'm willing to eat that. I'm willing to eat that sin. I have to. If only I can hold on to, if only we can hold fast to faith. Not magic, not like some sky daddy's gonna save us, not that it all goes out, it all comes out in the wash, not that kind of vapid fatalism. I'm more holding on to the faith that humans, that people like you have an intrinsic worth, and the curve of history always flows towards justice and progress. It has to, otherwise there is no progress. We as a species die in a macro sense. And again, to keep perspective, we humans are just nothing but fleeting mayflies. We have very little amount of time on this world, and our culture, our humanity, our species is created by the aggregate of us, by the billions and billions and billions of past Homo sapiens that have lived and succeeded and died and left behind some portions of themselves for the good of their children, for the good of progress, for the hope in the humanity that we can keep moving forward. It's actually pretty difficult to, anyway. So, anyway, that's my thoughts for today. It's a gray day. I love gray days. They're beautiful. They sharpen my taste for the melancholy and for the passing away and for honoring those people, those stories that we should hold on to as long as we can as a species. We need to hold on to the stories of the Voting Rights Act. We need to hold on to those sacrifices as much as we can and hold them as precious. And we need to stop, and to some extent, we're going to have to eat the sins of the past. We're going to have to eat the sins of our fellow humans and somehow move forward with it, because it's unavoidable. It is. It's unavoidable. And we have to move past that despair somehow, because our ancestors did, our forefathers did, and our children will. That's the thing about being in a, like I've said before, about being in a exponential curve. It's hard for us to fathom, even in your lifetime, the progress, the human knowledge that has been accumulated, even especially in my lifetime. In my lifetime, we humans have done extraordinary things. And in the lifetime of some of the people that may see this, maybe someday, maybe decades, maybe after I'm dead, I can't imagine the world that you're going to live in. Sure, you're going to have to eat the sins of your fathers. You're going to have to eat the misconceptions of me and mine. You're going to have to pay for that. But you're strong enough, just like our fathers were strong enough. Just like I hope we are strong enough. The Voting Rights Act is a canary in the coal mine about how we're on the ropes. What I hope is that when the pendulum swings, we will have learned as a group, as a species, we will have learned through some of this. And the expression of that, the replacement of things like the Voting Rights Act will be better, will be stronger, will be less able to be destroyed by tyrants and the stupidity of our fellow humans, the belligerence of the evil of the idea of race. I hope that as a process we can expunge that from the human condition. And that doesn't mean that we won't find other sins, of course. I mean, we're humans. If we survive, we will have other challenges, maybe even greater than these that we are facing today. But I have to hold fast, like H.G. Wells said, that all of the things that we have accomplished up until now are just the start. And nobility and humanity will move forward, regardless sometimes of the darkness that we're in. I got to hold fast to that, and so do you. And we need to be held accounted. We need to hold fast to our values and not shirk from them, but to just plainly speak them, and to eschew the trap of righteous indignation, which is in some ways, and as I've said, I think before, righteous indignation is humanity's most addictive drug, and in some ways, its most, well, I'm not going to quantify that. Anyway, I hope you have a good day. Don't give up hope, because hope is who we are, and I'm preaching to myself as much as anyone that may ever or may not see this. I'm not playing the games with the algorithm. I'm not promoting any of this. This is not for self-aggrandizement, as I've said in the past. This is for that one individual in the stratum of humanity that may or may not ever see this. Hold fast to your humanity. Hold fast to faith. The faith that we as a species, that we as a people have the ability to do better. To be better tomorrow than we are today. To be smarter than we are now. Because that's every day we learn more. And yeah. I hope you have a good day, my fellow humans. That's it. Have a wonderful day.